Um, Welcome to one of our last 2 days of Frankenstein. How exciting. Um, just been doing my stuff today. Almost done with my schoolwork. Still have some stuff going on. Right now I'm trying to decide whether or not I should get into a letterboxed fight with someone. Um, and what I think what I really want to do is just delete their comment and move on with my life. But who knows? Who knows what I'll do about that? Um, but yeah, so that's what I'm trying to decide on today. But just been doing I get really annoyed because my laptop is never flat with the top bar. Okay, now I think it is, but it feels weird now. I don't know why it's like that. This is whatever. Okay, so I will offer you my quote for today, and then we can get started on our summary, which I always forget, and our reading. So, our quote of the day from How to Be an Antiracist by Ibram X. Kendi is our first quote of the day, I should say is, okay. To be anti-racist is to view national and transnational ethnic groups as equal in all their differences. To be anti-racist is to challenge the racist policies that plague racialized ethnic groups across the world. To be anti-racist is to view the inequities between all racialized ethnic groups as a problem of policy. That's our first quote. So, I shouldn't put it all the way over there because it will be hard for me to reach later. Let's talk about what happened yesterday in Frankenstein. Womp, womp, womp. Don't know why I did that noise. Yes. So Frankenstein is they pull up on the shore, him and Elizabeth, they've just been married. And he's feeling real nervous. He's like, okay, Elizabeth, I'm going to check out this entire lodge. You go chill out in our room. I'll come there once I feel safe and sure that, nothing's going to happen. Not saying that you know what anything would be if nothing were to happen. But anyways, I think you should just go to your room while I run around here and check if there's anything weird going on. So he does. And then he hears a scream and he's like, what could that be? And he waits there. And then he hears another scream and he's like, great God, it's Elizabeth. And so he zoots up there real quick. And of course she's dead. And he's like, oh, the agony is mine. Oh my God, I'm so in pain. And everyone's like, and then he sees the creature at the window. He's like, guys, let's all go run after this guy. And then nobody finds him. So they're all like, okay. So finally, after then he goes home. He has to be like, hey, Dad, so Elizabeth died. And his dad is so depressed that his dad dies. So now Frankenstein, who at the start of the book had 6 close relations, is now down to 1, his younger brother, Ernest. So finally Frankenstein's like, I gotta tell somebody about this. So he goes to the magistrate and he's like, hello, I created a monster and now it's killing all of my family. Do you think you could help with that? And the magistrate's like, to be honest with you, I don't know what I can do. Where is he? Do you have any evidence? And Frankenstein's like, you're not going to help me? And the magistrate's like, I mean, I guess I'll help you, but I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. And that's where we left off. So let's get to it and see. So I'm going to read 5 pages today. 1, 2, 4, 5. Oh, God. Yeah, I'm going to read 5 pages today. And then we'll finish the book tomorrow. How exciting. Oh, and corrections corner. So, as I was reading the cover of this book, which you can clearly see, I was like, that's a weird way to write a G, but it's not. It's a C. As Patricia so wonderfully pointed out to me, it's Willa Cather, not Willa Gather. So Sophie needs to go back to reading school because I don't know why I thought it was gather, and I could clearly see that that is a C and not a G. You gotta admit, the little pointy thing's a little longer than I expected. But, oh well. Alright, let's get, oh no, oh we're good. I thought I lost my page. But I was smart, and I put another bookmark in there. Okay. Frankenstein, oh no, I need that. Let's put this one in there. Frankenstein, Volume 3, Chapter 7, Part 1. My present situation was one in which all voluntary thought was swallowed up and lost. I was hurried away by fury. Revenge alone endowed me with strength and composure. It modeled my feelings and allowed me to be calculating and calm, at periods when otherwise delirium or death would have been my portion. My first resolution was to quit Geneva forever. My country, which, when I was happy and beloved, was dear to me, now in my adversity became hateful. I provided myself with a sum of money, together with a few jewels which had belonged to my mother, and departed. What about Ernest? And now my wanderings began, which are to cease but with life. What? Did he just ditch Ernest? He's like, Ernest, I know that you've lost everyone you cared about, but consider I'm leaving. And now my wanderings began, which are to cease but with life. I have traversed a vast portion of the earth, and have endured all the hardships which travelers in deserts and barbarous countries are wont to meet. How I have lived I hardly know. Many times have I stretched my failing limbs upon the sandy plain and prayed for death. But revenge kept me alive. I dared not die and leave my adversary in being. When I quitted Geneva, my first labor was to gain some clue by which I might trace the steps of my fiendish enemy. But my plan was unsettled, and I wandered many hours around the confines of the town, uncertain what path I should pursue. As night approached, I found myself at the entrance of the cemetery where William, Elizabeth, and my father reposed. I entered it and approached the tomb which marked their graves. Everything was silent, except the leaves of the trees, which were gently agitated by the wind. The night was nearly dark, and the scene would have been solemn and affecting even to an uninterested observer. The spirits of the departed seemed to flit around and to cast a shadow, which was felt but seen not, around the head of the mourner. The deep grief which this scene had first excited quickly gave way to rage and despair. They were dead and I lived. Their murderer also lived, and to destroy him I must drag out my weary existence. I knelt on the grass and kissed the earth, and with quivering lips exclaimed, "By the sacred earth on which I kneel, by the shades that wander near me, by the deep and eternal grief that I feel, I swear, and by thee, O night, and by the spirits that preside over thee, I swear to pursue the daemon who caused this misery until he or I shall perish in mortal conflict. For this purpose I will preserve my life. To execute this dear revenge will I again behold the sun, and tread the green herbage of earth, which otherwise should vanish from my eyes forever. And I call on you, spirits of the dead, and on you, wandering ministers of vengeance, to aid and conduct me in my work. Let the cursed and hellish monster drink deep of agony. Let him feel the despair that now torments me." I mean, I think that's why he's tormenting you, because he does feel that. I had begun my adjuration with solemnity, and an awe which almost assured me that the shades of my murdered friends heard and approved my devotion. But the furies possessed me as I concluded, and rage choked my utterance. I was answered through the stillness of night by a loud and fiendish laugh. It rung on my ears long and heavy. The mountains re-echoed it, and I felt as if all hell surrounded me with mockery and laughter. Surely in that moment I should have been possessed by frenzy and have destroyed my miserable existence, but that my vow was heard, and that I was reserved for vengeance. The laughter died away when a well-known and abhorred voice, apparently close to my ear, addressed me in an audible whisper. I am satisfied, miserable wretch. You have determined to live, and I am satisfied. I darted towards the spot from which the sound proceeded, but the devil eluded my grasp. Suddenly, the broad disk of the moon arose and shone full upon his ghastly and distorted shape, as he fled with more than mortal speed. I pursued him. For many months this has been my task. Guided by a slight clue, I followed the windings of the Rhone. Hello, Dane. Welcome. But vainly. The blue Mediterranean appeared, and by a strange chance I saw the fiend enter by night, and hide himself in a vessel bound for the Black Sea. I took my passage in the same ship, but he escaped, I know not how. How? It's a boat! He doesn't have anywhere to go! It must have been a short journey, and a big boat. Amidst the winds of Tartary and Russia, although he still evaded me, I have ever followed in his track. Sometimes the peasants, scared by this horrid apparition, informed me of his path. Sometimes he himself, who feared that if I lost all trace I should despair and die, often left some mark to guide me. The snows descended on my head, and I saw the print of his huge step on the white plain. To you first entering on life, to whom care is new and agony unknown, how can you understand what I have felt and still feel? Cold, want, and fatigue were the least pains which I was destined to endure. I was cursed by some devil and carried about with me my eternal hell. Yet still a spirit of good followed and directed my steps, and when I most murmured, would suddenly extricate me from seemingly insurmountable difficulties. Sometimes when nature, overcome by hunger, sunk under the exhaustion, a repast was prepared for me in the desert that restored and inspirited me. The fare was indeed coarse, such as the peasants of the country ate, but I may not doubt that it was set there by the spirits that I had invoked to aid me. Often, when all was dry, the heavens cloudless, and I was parched by thirst, a slight cloud would bedim the sky, shed the few drops that revived me, and vanish. It's bold of you to assume, Dane, that Frankenstein has a plan. I don't know. He's probably just gonna launch himself. Who knows? I followed when I could the courses of the rivers, but the daemon generally avoided these, as it was here that the population of the country chiefly collected. In other places, human beings were seldom seen, and I generally subsisted on wild animals that crossed my path. I had money with me and gained the friendship of the villagers by distributing it, or bringing with me some food that I had killed, which, after taking a small part, I always presented to those who had provided me with fire and utensils for cooking. My life, as it passed thus, was indeed hateful to me, and it was during sleep alone that I could taste joy. Oh, blessed sleep! Often, when most miserable, I sank to repose, and my dreams lulled me even to rapture. The spirits that guarded me had provided these moments, or rather hours of happiness, that I might retain strength to fulfill my pilgrimage. Deprived of this respite, I should have sunk under my hardships. During the day I was sustained and inspirited by the hope of night, for in sleep I saw my friends, my wife, and my beloved country. Again I saw the benevolent countenance of my father. There's a plane. Okay, the plane's gone. Heard the silver tones of my Elizabeth's voice, and beheld Clerval enjoying health and youth. Often, when wearied by a toilsome march, I persuaded myself that I was dreaming until night should come, and that I should then enjoy reality in the arms of my dearest friends. What agonizing fondness did I feel for them! How did I cling to their dear forms as sometimes they haunted even my waking hours, and persuade myself that they still lived. At such moments, vengeance that burned within me died in my heart, and I pursued my path toward the destruction of the daemon, more as a task enjoined by heaven, as the mechanical impulse of some power which I was unconscious, than as the ardent desire of my soul. What his feelings were whom I pursued, I cannot know. Sometimes, indeed, be left, I think it must be he left marks in writing on the barks of the trees, or cut in stone that guided me and instigated my fury. My reign is not over yet. These words were legible in one of these inscriptions. You live, and my power is complete. Follow me. I seek the everlasting ices of the north, where you will feel the misery of cold and frost, to which I am impassive. You will find near this place, if you follow not too tardily, a dead hare. Eat and be refreshed. Come on, my enemy. We have yet to wrestle for our lives, but many hard and miserable hours must you endure, till that period shall arrive. Scoffing devil, again do I vow vengeance, again do I devote thee, miserable fiend, to torture and death. Never will I omit my search until he or I perish, and then with what ecstasy shall I join my Elizabeth, and those who even now prepare for me the reward of my tedious toil and horrible pilgrimage. Do you deserve a reward? As I still pursued my journey to the northward, the snows thickened and the cold increased in a degree almost too severe to support. The peasants were shut up in their hovels, and only a few of the most hardy ventured forth to seize the animals whom starvation had forced from their hiding places to seek for prey. The rivers were covered with ice, no fish could be procured, and thus I was cut off from my chief article of maintenance. The triumph of my enemy increased with the difficulty of my labors. One inscription that he left was in these words: Prepare. Your toils only began. Wrap yourself in furs and provide food, for we shall soon enter upon a journey where your sufferings will satisfy my everlasting hatred. My courage and perseverance were invigorated by these scoffing words. I resolved not to fail in my purpose, and calling on heaven to support me, I continued with unabated fervor to traverse immense deserts, until the ocean appeared at a distance and formed the utmost boundary of the horizon. Oh, how unlike it was to the blue seas of the south! Covered with ice, it was only to be distinguished from land by its superior wildness and ruggedness. Many Greeks wept for joy when they beheld the Mediterranean from the hills of Asia, and hailed with rapture the boundary of their toils. I did not weep, but I knelt down and with a full heart thanked my guiding spirit for conducting me in safety to the place where I hoped, notwithstanding my adversary's jibe, to meet and grapple with him. Some weeks before this period, I had procured a sledge and dogs, and thus traversed the snows with inconceivable speed. I know not whether the fiend possessed the same advantages, but I found that, as before I had daily lost ground of the pursuit, I now gained on him. So much so that when I first saw the ocean, he was but one day's journey in advance, and I hoped to intercept him before he should reach the beach. With new courage, therefore, I pressed on, and in 2 days arrived at a wretched hamlet on the seashore. I inquired of the inhabitants concerning the fiend, and gained accurate information. A gigantic monster, they said, had arrived the night before, armed with a gun and many pistols, putting to flight the inhabitants of a solitary cottage through fear of his terrific appearance. He had carried off their store of winter food, and placing it in a sledge, to draw which he had seized on a numerous drove of trained dogs, he had harnessed them, and the same night, to the joy of the horror-struck villagers, had pursued his journey across the sea in a direction that led to no land, and they conjectured that he must speedily be destroyed by the breaking of the ice, or frozen by the eternal frosts. On hearing this information, I suffered a temporary access of despair. He had escaped me, and I must commence a destructive and almost endless journey across the mountainous ices of the ocean, amidst cold that I'm hitting weird O's today, like ocean. I'm really hitting the O's. Amidst cold that few of the inhabitants could long endure, to which I, the native of a native of a genial and sunny climate, could not hope to survive. Yet at the idea that the fiend should live and be triumphant, my rage and vengeance returned, and like a mighty tide overwhelmed every other feeling. After a slight repose, during which the spirits of the dead hovered round and instigated to me toil and revenge, I prepared for my journey. I exchanged my land sledge for one fashioned for the inequalities of the frozen ocean, and purchasing a plentiful stock of provisions, I departed from land. I cannot guess how many days have passed since then, but I have endured misery which nothing but eternal sentiment of a just retribution, burning within my heart, could have enabled me to support. Immense and rugged mountains of ice often barred up my passage, and I often heard the thunder of the ground sea which threatened my destruction. But again the frost came and made the paths of the sea secure. By the quantity of provisions which I had consumed, I should guess that I had passed 3 weeks in this journey, and the continual protraction of hope, returning back upon the heart, often wrung bitter drops of despondency and grief from my eyes. Despair had indeed almost secured her prey, and I should soon have sunk beneath this misery when once, after the poor animals that carried me had with incredible toil gained the summit of a sloping ice mountain, and one sinking under his fatigue died, oh no. One of the dogs died. I viewed the expanse before me with anguish, when suddenly my eye caught a dark speck upon the dusky plain. I straightened my sight to discover what it could be, and uttered a wild cry of ecstasy when I distinguished a sledge and the distorted proportions of a well-known form within. Oh, with what a burning gush did hope revisit my heart! Warm tears filled my eyes, which I hastily wiped away, that they might not intercept the view I had of the daemon. But still, where am I? But still my sight was dimmed by the burning drops until, giving way to the emotions that oppressed me, I wept aloud. But this was not the time for delay. I disencumbered the dogs of their dead companion, Jesus, gave them a plentiful portion of food, and after an hour's rest, which was absolutely necessary, and yet which was bitterly irksome to me because you're not running, you're just sitting in a sledge being dragged, I continued my route. The sledge was still visible, nor did I again lose sight of it except at the moments for when a short time some ice rock concealed it with its intervening crags. I indeed perceptibly gained on it, and when, after nearly 2 days' journey, I beheld my enemy at no more than a mile distant, my heart bounded within me. But now, when I appeared almost within grasp of my enemy, my hopes were suddenly extinguished, and I lost all trace of him more utterly than I had ever done before. A ground sea was heard. The thunder of its progress as the waters rolled and swelled beneath me became in every moment more ominous and terrific. I pressed on, but in vain. The wind arose, the sea roared, and as with the mighty shock of an earthquake, it split and cracked with a tremendous and overwhelming sound. The work was soon finished. In a few minutes, a tumultuous sea rolled between me and my enemy, and I was left drifting on a scattered piece of ice that was continually lessening, and thus preparing for me a hideous death. In this manner, many appalling hours hours passed. Several of my dogs died. Good Lord! And I myself was about to sink under the accumulation of distress, when I saw your vessel riding at anchor and holding forth to me hopes of succor and life. I had no conception that vessels ever came so far north, and was astounded at the sight. I quickly destroyed part of my sledge to construct oars, and by these means was enabled, with infinite fatigue, to move my ice raft in the direction of your ship. I had determined, if you were going southward, still to trust myself to the mercy of the seas rather than abandon my purpose. I hoped to induce you to grant me a boat with which I could still pursue my enemy. But your direction was northward. You took me on board when my vigor was exhausted, and I should soon have sunk under my multiplied hardships into a death which I still dread. For my task is unfulfilled. Oh, when will my guiding spirit, in conducting me to the daemon, allow me the rest I so much desire, or must I die and he yet live? If I do, swear to me, Walton, that he shall not escape, that you will seek him and satisfy my vengeance in his death. Yet do I dare ask you to undertake my pilgrimage, to endure the hardships that I have undergone? No, I am not so selfish. Yet when I am dead, if he should appear, if the ministers of vengeance should conduct him to you, swear that he shall not live. Swear that he shall not triumph over my accumulated woes and live to make another such a wretch as I am. He is eloquent and persuasive,
and once his words and even had even power over my heart. But trust him not. Why not? You what? If you had just done what he asked. His soul is as hellish as his form, full of treachery and fiend-like malice. Hear him not. Call on the names of William, Justine, Clairville, Elizabeth, my father, and of the wretched Victor, and thrust your sword into his heart. I will hover near and direct the steel aright. Walton, in continuation.
I guess that's the end of Frankenstein's narration. Now it's back to Walton.
August 26th, 17-something. You have read this strange and terrific story, Margaret, and do you not feel your blood congealed with horror, like that which even now curdles mine? Sometimes, seized with sudden agony, he could not continue his tale. At others, his voice broken yet piercing, uttered with difficulty the words so replete with agony. His fine and lovely eyes were now lighted up with indignation, now subdued to downcast sorrow, and quenched in infinite wretchedness. Sometimes he commanded his countenance and tones, and related the most horrible incidents with a tranquil voice, suppressing every mark of agitation. Then, like a volcano bursting forth, his face would suddenly change to an expression of the wildest rage, as he shrieked out imprecations on his persecutor. He was persecuting him. His tale is connected and told with an appearance of the simplest truth, yet I own to you that the letters of Felix and Safie, which he showed me, and the apparition of the monster seen from our ship, brought to me a greater conviction of the truth of his narrative than his asseverations, however earnest and connected. Such a monster has then really existence. I cannot doubt it. Yet I am lost in surprise and admiration. Sometimes I endeavored to gain from Frankenstein the particulars of his creature's formation, but on this point he was impenetrable. Are you mad, my friend? Said he. Or whither does your senseless curiosity lead you? Would you also create for yourself and the world a demoniacal enemy? Or to what do your questions tend? Peace, peace. Learn my miseries, and do not seek to increase your own. Frankenstein discovered that I had made notes concerning his history. He asked to see them, and then himself corrected and augmented them in many places, but principally in giving the life and spirit to the conversation he held with his enemy. Since you have preserved my narration, said he, I would not that a mutilated one should go down to posterity. Excuse me?
Oh, I've got it. What the hell is that? I have some like eucalyptus sap in my hair. So sticky, but it smells really good. I was out in my backyard cleaning. It's very sticky.
Thus has a week passed away while I have listened to the strangest tale that ever imagination formed. My thoughts and every feeling of my soul have been drunk up by the interest for my guest which this tale and his own elevated and gentle manners have created. I wish to soothe him, yet can I counsel one so infinitely miserable, so destitute of every hope of consolation to live? Oh no! The only joy that he can now know will be when he composes his shattered feelings to peace and death. Yet he enjoys one comfort, the offspring of solitude and delirium. He believes that, when in dreams, he holds converse with his friends, and derives from that communion consolation for his miseries, or excitements to his vengeance.
Oh boy, I lost it.
That they are not the creations of his fancy, but the real beings who visit him from the regions of a remote world. This faith gives a solemnity to his reveries that render him to me almost as imposing and interesting as truth. Our conversations are not always confined to his own history and misfortune. On every point of general literature he displays an unbounded knowledge and a quick and piercing apprehension. His eloquence is forcible and touching, nor can I hear him when he relates a pathetic incident or endeavors to move the passions of pity or love without tears. What a glorious creature must he have been in the days of his prosperity, when he is thus noble and godlike in ruin. Jesus. Walton. He seems to feel his own worth when the greatness of his fall. When younger, said he, I felt as if I were destined for some great enterprise. My feelings are profound, but I possessed a coolness of judgment that fitted me for illustrious achievements. This sentiment of worth of my nature supported me when others would have been oppressed, for I deemed it criminal to throw away in useless grief those talents that might be useful to my fellow creatures. When I reflected on the work I had completed, no less a one than the creation of a sensitive and rational animal, I could not rank myself with the herd of common projectors. But this feeling which supported me in the commencement of my career now serves only to plunge me lower in the dust. All my speculations and hopes are as nothing, and like the archangel who aspired to omnipotence, I am chained in an eternal hell. My imagination was vivid, yet my powers of analysis and application were intense. By the union of these qualities, I conceived the idea and executed the creation of a man. Even now, I cannot recollect without passion my reveries while the work was incomplete. I trod heaven in my thoughts, now exalting in my powers, now burning with the idea of their effects. From my infancy, I was imbued with high hopes and a lofty ambition. But how am I sunk? Oh, my friend, if you had known me as I once was, you would not recognize me in this state of degradation. Despondency rarely visited my heart. A high destiny seemed to bear me on until I fell, never again to rise. Must I then lose this admirable being? I have longed for a friend. I have sought one who would sympathize with and love me. Behold, on these desert seas I have found such a one, but I fear I have gained him only to know his value and lose him. I would reconcile him to life, but he repulses the idea. This is this is very, very homoerotic. There's a lot of gay stuff going on here. I don't know, just the words are so tender. I thank you, Walton, he said, for your kind intentions towards so miserable a wretch. But when you speak of new ties and fresh affections, think you that any can replace those who are gone? Can any man be to me as Clerval was, or any woman another Elizabeth? Even where the affections are not strongly moved by any superior excellence, the companions of our childhood always possess a certain power over our minds which hardly any latter friend can obtain. They know our infantine dispositions, which, however they may be afterwards modified, are never eradicated, and they can judge of our actions with more certain conclusions as to the integrity of our motives. A sister or a brother can never, unless indeed such symptoms have been shown early, suspect the other of fraud or false dealing when another friend, however strongly he may be attached, may, in spite of himself, be invaded with suspicion. But I enjoyed friends, dear not only through habit and association, but from their own merits. And wherever I am, the soothing voice of my Elizabeth and the conversation of Clerval will be ever whispered in my ear. They are dead, and but one feeling in such a solitude can persuade me to preserve my life. If I were engaged in any high undertaking or design, fraught with extensive utility to my fellow creatures, then I could live to fulfill it. But such is not my destiny. I must pursue and destroy the being to whom I gave existence. Then my lot on earth will be fulfilled, and I may die. And that is where we will end for today. Wow, wow, wow. How interesting. Okay, well, that's all for today. I will see you back here tomorrow for the conclusion, for the end of Frankenstein. Who would have thunk? What is this? Is this our third book? I think it's our third. Yes. Who would have thought? 3 books, 1 quarantine. Okay, let's read our last quote from How to Be an Antiracist and head on our merry ways. Our last quote for today, not forever. Okay. With ethnic racism, no one wins except the racist power at the top. As with all racism, that is the entire point. A quick one for a quick one for the end. All right, I will see you tomorrow at 3 for the thrilling conclusion of Frankenstein. Okie dokie, guys and gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.